Welcome. I am Dr. Patrice Berry, licensed clinical psychologist, and here I share legal and entertainment news from a psychological perspective. So, right now, I was just sitting back watching the Chad Daybell trial, and Melanie Pulowski, who is Lori Vallow's niece, she just finished up testifying. Think so. There's somebody else with the same last name that's testifying now. Not sure if that is her husband or not, but we will see if we get there. I have an hour and a half. So let's see how much we can stream. If y'all have questions, please let me know. But as I was watching this, I was having lots of thoughts that I wanted to share with y'all. So let's go. I did watch the testimony of Heather Daybell, Chad's sister-in-law, and because she was on the defense's list, and I was like, wait a minute, because I've seen her on podcasts. I've seen she does not speak highly of Chad at all. So I wasn't sure why the defense would be calling her. So it made a lot of sense when the prosecution called her. I did watch her testimony. It was very similar to things that I had seen her say on Hidden True Crimes podcast and in other places. And so I really didn't have anything to add to that one. So let's start with Melanie. I believe this was formerly Melanie Gibbs, but now she's Melanie Pulowski. But this is Lori Vallow's niece. All right. Let's go.
Your Honor, the state will call Melanie Pulowski.
I'm going to speed it up a little bit. I was watching it on like 1.5 speed and it wasn't too bad. So let's do that. Let's see how this goes.
Or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
That might be a little too fast. I'll slow it down just a little bit. 1.25. And the judge asked her if she's heard anything with the trial.
I am going to inquire from the witness because this trial has been both live streamed and open to public access. Ms. Pulowski, have you reviewed or watched any of the trial testimony since this case started?
No, sir.
Have you talked to anybody about the testimony they've given at trial?
No, sir.
Okay, that'll conclude my inquiry. Then you may inquire Ms. Blake on direct.
Melanie Gibb was a friend. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Yes. Melanie Pulowski, MELANIPAWLOWSKI.
Ms. Pulowski, do you know an individual named Lori Vallow?
Yes.
How do you know her?
She's my aunt.
Do you know an individual named Alex Cox?
Yes.
And how do you know him?
He was my uncle.
And do you know an individual named Chad Daybell?
Yes.
How do you know him?
He married my aunt Lori.
Do you recall approximately when he married your aunt?
I believe they were married sometime in November of 2019.
And had you met him prior to Lori and he getting married?
Yes.
In relation to your relationship with Alex Cox, were you close with him?
Yes.
And how about with Lori? Were you close with her?
Yes.
At some point, did you look to Lori as a mother figure?
Yes.
And when you met, do you recall approximately when you met Chad?
I believe in November of 2018.
Did you continue to interact with Chad from that point on?
Through Lori.
So when you say through Lori, would you communicate with Chad through Lori?
She would say, Chad said to tell you this, or it would be mostly through Lori for the most part.
Would you also send messages to Chad through Lori?
Yes.
Did that include you asking Chad for guidance or advice?
Yes.
Would you say at some point you developed a close relationship with Chad?
Yes.
At some point, did you eventually begin referring to him as Dad?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
At some point, did Lori and Chad begin sharing teachings with you or their purported beliefs?
Yes.
Do you recall them sharing some teachings regarding light and dark?
Yes.
Do you recall which one of them, or if it was both of them that shared those things with you?
Both.
And when you say both, at times, were they both together when they shared those with you?
Both together and separate.
So at times just Lori would share them,
Yes.
and at times just Chad would share them. Is that fair?
And to me, this testimony is really important because the defense is trying to make it sound like Lori is the one that had all of these strange beliefs and she had convinced Chad. And Chad was just this like love struck guy who didn't know anything. And to me, this testimony is showing like that Lori is looking to him. And I thought this was just really interesting.
I don't know if I remember a time where it was just Chad. I do remember them being together and then with just Lori.
And with what Lori was teaching you, do you know where those ideas were originating from?
I believe they came from Chad.
Do you recall what they taught you or told you in relation to light and dark?
From what I remember, Chad was said to have a gift to spiritually discern, and he could see light and dark, or if a person had good intentions, but that he could see through and had that gift.
And did you ever learn about him having some kind of a tool or something that he would use to help him discern light and dark?
Yes.
What did you learn about that?
That he had a pendant or like necklace, something to that effect, that he could like a pendulum kind of thing, or he.
And this was the first time I had heard this. I didn't realize that he used some swinging tool to figure out if people were light or dark. I had not heard this part yet. I'm not following. So we're on day 17 of this trial. So I have missed some portions, but and I haven't seen the cross examination. And so we know that prior, as the testimony starts to get to stuff that, in my opinion, Pryor doesn't like as much, he's going to start objecting a lot more.
Or he could get an answer to something he wanted to know.
And it looks like, and just for the record, it looks like you were making a swinging motion with your hand. Is that correct?
That's what I've seen from other people that will use like a tool or something like that, I think you swing it, and if it swings one way, it means yes or no. I'm not sure exactly.
And was it your understanding that Chad always had to use that tool to discern light and dark?
From what I remember being told is that he didn't always need that. It was just something extra he could use.
At some point, did Chad and Lori teach you about castings?
Yes.
What do you recall them teaching you regarding castings?
From the basis of where it comes in the scriptures, where you raise actually, I don't even know if that specifically is in the scriptures, but where you raise your right hand and can cast out a dark spirit or a demon. But they would explain how to do that and the correct way to do that, or sharing different ideas on how what that could mean.
And did they teach you who castings would be done on or for?
Yes.
And who were those individuals?
That you could do, you could cast out at any time for anybody if you feel like you're being inflicted with some type of dark spirit or a bad feeling, that anybody at any time could raise their right hand to the square and cast out.
Did you?
And I think a few other people have explained portions of this as well, but she was involved with some of these castings, and the fact that the person didn't even have to be there, that I guess somebody could raise their hand to cast out the evil spirit. I've seen that in so within like a Christian tradition as well. Sometimes that's more of the person has to be there and you like pray for them or something like that. That's what I've sometimes heard of. This is a little different, where the person doesn't even have to be there, and you discern that the person, or that there's some evil or demon. And my biggest concern with this is I don't believe that Chad and Lori were checking their own beliefs and their own desires. I think what they were saying, that they were hearing from God, it sounded like it was their own wishes, wants, and desires, in my opinion.
Do you participate in any castings?
Yes.
Do you recall who those castings were done on or for?
I remember one where Lori invited us over to do a casting on Charles.
And
Charles.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
And you said it was done on Charles?
Yes.
Had you been told anything in relation to Charles being dark at that point?
I think at that time they believed, and Lori and Chad believed Charles was affected by some type of dark spirit.
When you participate in a casting, is the person there? So was Charles physically present when you participated in the casting?
No.
And as part of the casting, was anything physically being done to Charles
As I'm not
by
gonna
any of you?
understand. Oh, no.
So he's not there. No one's laying hands on him during a casting.
No.
At some point, did you learn whether or not JJ had been labeled as dark?
Yes.
And what did you learn in relation to that?
An objection based on foundation
And Your Honor, I'm just asking broadly if at some point she learned that.
and so
At some point, did you learn that JJ had been deemed dark?
Yes.
Do you recall what you learned in relation to that?
I don't remember super clearly on that, but just that at some point JJ was affected by some type of darkness.
Did you ever learn anything in relation to Tylee being labeled as dark?
Yes.
And what did you learn in relation to that?
That I believe Chad labeled her as dark.
And do you know who it was that labeled JJ as dark?
I assume that it was Chad.
And is that because Chad had the ability or
Judge, I'm going to object at this point. It's bleeding.
sustain.
previously had you learned about Chad having the ability to discern light and dark?
Yes.
Just a heads up, at some point, the audio is going to shift and her side is going to get louder. So just a heads up when that, but I think the judge is going to ask her to speak up when that happens.
In the casting you participated in, do you recall if Lori was present?
Yes.
Do you recall if Chad was present?
I believe he was.
Do you know?
I'm sorry, Ms. Pulaski, could you maybe pull the mic a little closer? I think we're barely picking you up.
Yeah, sorry.
You're welcome.
And it might be directional too if you pop it just under your chin.
Okay.
That's better. Thank you.
Do you know where the idea of castings, the way that Chad and Lori were teaching it, originated from?
Judge, could I have some foundation objection?
Your Honor, I'm asking if she knows where it originated.
Overruled.
Sorry, could you say it again?
Do you know where the idea of casting, how Lori and Chad were teaching it, where it originated from or with whom?
From what I remember, their teachings and their ideas were constantly changing, but I believe the original idea came from the Julie Rowe podcasts where she would teach how to.
So I thought it was interesting that she noted that their ideas and what they were saying was constantly changing, which further to me supports that they were changing their beliefs to fit whatever they wanted to do, that this was a very fluid thing for them, the people at the top, not so much for the people that it ended up having an impact on. And this is one of the, so I know Heather Daybell brought up Julie Rowe. So Julie Rowe had a podcast. Chad, he was an editor for Julie Rowe. And it sounds like some of these things started with her. And then also the Visions of Glory book. That book is not going to come up. But, and I guess Julie Rowe was actually excommunicated from the church because like of her beliefs and all of that. And that came up more with Heather's testimony.
How to cast out, and she had a like a long way of doing that. And then I think they kind of both, and Chad and Lori, when I say both, kind of added their own ideas to that from there.
And we talk a little bit about Tylee, but did you know Tylee, Ryan?
Yes.
And how did you know her?
She was my cousin.
Do you recall when the last time you saw Tylee was?
I believe the last time I saw her was when she was packing up in Arizona, preparing to move with her mom and with JJ.
And do you know JJ Vallow?
Yes.
And how did you know him?
He was my cousin.
And you last saw him around that same time?
Yes.
Prior to Lori moving, do you recall Charles passing away?
Yes.
Do you recall learning of Charles passing?
Yes.
Who did you learn about it from?
From what I remember, my ex-husband pulled me into the garage and had Adam Cox, my uncle, on the phone. And he said,
I'm going to object at this point. Calls for hearsay.
Sustained.
Your Honor, and I would say it doesn't go for the truth of the matter. It goes for the effect on the listener.
We're gonna go
I'll
back and
still
forth.
sustain the objection. The question was, what did she learn? And that's coming directly now from some hearsay, so it's sustained.
So you learned from Adam Cox.
Judge,
Yeah.
the witness is being led. Objection.
I'll sustain that as well. That was a leading question. Strike the answer.
Who did you learn? Who told you about Charles passing?
I remember Adam Cox told me my
I'm
ex.
going to object at this point. The response calls for hearsay.
Overruled.
You can continue.
My uncle Adam Cox, I remember, was on speaker on my ex-husband's phone, and he said Charles had been murdered.
Judge, I'm going to move to strike. I previously objected.
That's sustained. The answer is stricken.
And the thing with striking an answer is the jury heard it. And that's sometimes how things end up getting in. But the jury still heard it. They're supposed to not think about it, but they still heard it.
At some point, did you speak with Lori about Charles' death?
Yes.
What do you recall what she told you regarding Charles' death?
Yes, I remember I went to her home and her and Tylee were still shooken up from it, but they explained that there was some type of fight that my uncle Alex got into with Charles and that Alex shot Charles.
Were you aware if Chad had ever designated Alex to have a certain role in this life?
Judge, I'm going to object. There's lack of foundation.
Overruled.
You can answer if you know.
I'm not sure specifically what that was, but probably designated something.
Good.
Did you ever talk to Alex about Charles' death?
Yes.
What did Alex tell you?
He told me that Charles had become enraged and that he got into a physical fight with him, that there was a baseball bat involved, and that Charles had hit Alex in the back of the head with a baseball bat, and then he ended up shooting him with his gun that he had.
And this took place prior to Lori moving to Rexburg, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you ever talk to Lori about why she was moving to Rexburg?
I don't know if she told me she was moving right off the bat. She was kind of
In my opinion, she was trying to get closer to Chad. Those are my thoughts.
I just remember when she was moving, she was telling everybody different things, kind of where she's moving or that she was needed to be protected and had to protect the kids, that she was going into hiding.
So she mentioned needing to be protected.
Yes.
Who else moved with her, if you know, when she left to Rexburg?
She took Tylee and JJ, I believe, with her when she moved to Rexburg, and Alex Cox helped them move.
Did Alex Cox also move?
Yes.
At some point after they moved to Rexburg, did you end up visiting them?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately when that would have been?
I believe it was the end of September, on a weekend when I wasn't with my children, and I flew up to visit Lori.
Where did you stay when you were in Rexburg?
I stayed at the apartment that Lori was staying at.
When you arrived, did you see JJ?
No.
Did you
Judge, I'm going to object on the basis if we could just have some foundation as to time and date.
Your Honor, she said one of the last weekends in September.
I'll overrule it.
And to clarify, was this of 2019?
Yes.
When you arrived, was JJ there?
No.
Was Tylee there?
No.
Do you recall if Melanie Gibb or David Warwick were there during your visit?
I don't remember them being there during my visit, from what I remember.
Did you ask Lori where Tylee was?
Yes.
What did she tell you?
I got a few different answers, but one I remember clearly was that she was with a friend from college at BYU, and that she was kind of doing her own thing. But that's one of the main answers that she would give.
Did you ask where JJ was?
Yes.
What did she tell you about JJ?
She said she had hired a nanny there in the area, and that the nanny helped a lot with JJ.
Prior to going up there to visit, had you spoken with Lori on the phone?
Yes.
Did you ever hear Tylee or JJ in the background?
Not that I remember.
During that visit, did you see Chad Daybell?
I don't remember if I did or didn't.
That's honest.
In October, do you recall going on a trip with Lori?
Yes.
Where did you go?
To, sorry, you said October?
Yes, October.
We went to Hawaii.
Do you recall going somewhere with her prior to traveling to Hawaii?
Yes.
And where was that?
Missouri.
When you went to Missouri, was Tylee with you?
No.
Was JJ with you?
No.
Did you ask Lori where they were?
Yes.
What did she tell you?
I think she said that the nanny was helping with JJ, and I don't think Tylee at the time needed like a babysitter. She was old enough to kind of be independent. Or maybe it could have been too that Tylee was helping with JJ. I can't remember exactly.
Did you ever hear Lori on the
I agree, Sarah. I think he is objecting at particular. Now, he was right. She didn't lay a foundation. like he's making her stay. So she had said September, but I forgot that she even, while I was listening, I didn't even hear September. And so I think he's making her say exactly when and where. And I think it's to also disrupt the prosecutor as well, because she's getting on a flow. And so objections kind of interrupt that too. And it can also break things up for the jury. And he starts objecting a lot as the testimony starts to get more damaging for his client, based on what I've seen.
on the phone with them while you were in Missouri?
No.
And then you said you traveled to Hawaii with her in October as well.
Yes.
And again, is this October of 2019?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately what part of October, what time in October you went to Hawaii?
I believe it was in the middle of October.
Was JJ with you in Hawaii?
No.
Was Tylee with you in Hawaii?
No.
Did you ask Lori where they were?
I believe I did. I probably would have, yes.
And do you recall what she indicated to you?
I don't. Probably one of the same answers she had been.
Judge, I'm going to move for objection speculation. She answered the question.
Sustained.
Did you ever hear Lori on the phone with JJ or Tylee while you were in Hawaii?
No.
Did you hear her on the phone with Chad Daybell?
I heard her on the phone, but she would put headphones in, so I never knew who she was talking to.
Did you know the nature of Chad and Lori's relationship?
Somewhat, or I thought I did. Now I have different ideas, but
At the time, did you think they were really close?
yes.
Do you know, or did you observe them talk on the phone a lot?
I'm going to object at this point without some foundation.
You can answer if you know.
Can you ask that again?
Do you observe them talk on the phone a lot?
Lori always had headphones in, but I assumed
Judge, I'm going to object. Calls for speculation.
Well, the answer is so it's sustained.
Did Lori ever tell you that she would talk to Chad?
yes.
Did Lori ever tell you that she would exchange text messages with Chad?
I assumed she texted with Chad. I don't think she ever, I mean, probably, she probably would say I texted Chad and he said this.
And she would give you messages from Chad, correct?
Yes.
So you knew, based on what she was telling you, she'd been in communication with Chad.
Yes.
Did something happen back in Idaho while you were in Hawaii?
Yes.
And what was that?
Tammy Daybell passed away.
How did you learn that information?
Audrey, who was staying with us.
Judge, I'm going to object. It's going to call for hearsay.
And there's a part of me that wonders if Lori wanted to be out of state when something happened. It makes it really suspicious that Alex's phone was up the street at a church that night. That whole situation is just very, very suspicious. I wonder if Lori left the state because just in case anyone thought that she could have been involved. That's just my pure speculation. I don't know, but that's what it makes me think of.
At some point while you were there, you learned of Tammy's passing, though?
Yes.
How did Lori seem to be?
Happy.
She, from what I could tell, seemed in a state of shock, just surprised.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Did Lori head back to Idaho after that?
Yes.
Did you head back to Idaho right away?
No, I stayed longer.
Was someone else supposed to go on the trip with you and Lori to Hawaii?
I think I found out later that Alex was going to come with us on that trip.
Why didn't Alex go?
Lori said Chad had something that he needed help with.
What? What? Okay, I hadn't heard that part yet. I think Chad might get convicted. We'll see. We'll see what the jury thinks. Innocent until proven guilty. That seems a bit suspicious. Okay.
At some point, did Chad or Lori talk to you about the Church of the Firstborn?
Yes.
What, if anything, did they indicate in relation to Chad's role with the Church of the Firstborn?
That Chad believed he was to help organize and learn more about the Church of the Firstborn.
Did Chad and Lori ever share with you what they believed their mission in this world to be?
I believe it was to help with the second coming of Jesus Christ.
Chad does a phenomenal job not reacting. Like, he just sits there. I cannot sit as still as he is, just sitting here, like, listening to this. Like, he sits, like, perfectly still. Like, there's a stick up his, like, he just sits. Like, there's no other way to describe it. Like, he just sits. So, like this. And to me, he seems highly controlled. When I've seen people do things like that, sometimes I've wondered, is there another side to them? Like, when the cameras aren't there, when they're not trying to, like, control it like that. I wonder. He's described as being pretty, like, soft-spoken, more like an introvert. That's how he's described. Lori was described as the more kind of, I don't know, theatrical, like, she was more attention seeking. That really wasn't his style. And I thought his mom's testimony, I thought it was really interesting. I think the prosecution went really easy on his mom, because the prosecution could have asked her a lot of harder questions. And I'm sure it was hard for his mom being called by the prosecution to testify against her son, and having to say that they didn't know about Lori before, and when they met Lori shortly after Tammy's death and learned about his marriage. I thought the prosecution went, because the defense redirected, and the prosecution could have, I think, asked her some harder hitting questions, and they really didn't. And I think that was just to not. I think the prosecution would have looked bad if they had went after his mom too hard. So that's it.
And we talked about the dark and light and you turning to Chad for advice. Were those some of the things that you would ask Chad if someone was dark or light?
Yes.
I wonder if he's giving
At
her a
some
new rate.
point, did you learn a different term for people that were possessed?
Yes.
And what was that term?
Zombie.
Do you recall who introduced that term to you?
I believe it was Lori.
Lori, okay.
At some point, did Chad or Lori also talk to you about what it meant if someone was possessed or became a zombie, where the actual person would go?
Yes.
What did you learn in regards to that?
So that there was some type of darkness that you couldn't cast out. And so if this, that the Lord in his due time would have to take, that person would pass away because this darkness was too much or something like that.
So if someone were to be possessed and with a strong enough entity, essentially the body would have to die.
Judge, that's leading.
It's
Calls for speculation.
It was.
Sustained on leading.
It was.
If someone became too dark, would the body have to die?
Judge, leading.
Overruled.
It's a question.
I believe so. That I think that was their idea, that they would pass away because they couldn't have this darkness inside them, or that it overtook them.
And do you know where that idea originated from, or with who?
Judge, calls for speculation.
Overruled.
The zombie idea, or the
idea that the body would have to expire.
I'm not sure where it originated, but I believed it to be Chad.
At some point, did you have conversations with Chad and Lori about law enforcement?
Yes.
What did they tell you in relation to law enforcement?
They told me that law enforcement was corrupt and that they were after them and that they couldn't be trusted.
Did they tell you anything in relation to whether or not to speak with law enforcement?
Yes.
And what did they tell you?
They told me don't speak with law enforcement.
Judge, can I have some foundation? Objection.
At some point, do you recall if specific law enforcement officers were identified as dark by Chad and Lori?
Yes.
Who were those officers?
Detective Aramisio and I want to say Detective Hope. Is that? I'm not sure if that's right. There was somebody who was related to Tammy's family, I think.
And those are the two you specifically remember being named?
Yes.
It's so interesting, but not. It's just so interesting that everyone that's dark are people that they think are against them. And that's where them thinking that they had this calling from God and they were going to bring back the second coming of the church and they had this special mission. And I believe Lori believed it, like for real. Chad's family. So in listening to Heather Daybell talk about it, it sounds like he's been a pretty strong member of that prepper community but his ideas and thoughts to me veered away from the mainstream and nobody was able to check it. And it's very concerning to me. He does have some ounce of self-protection because Lori did not. Because if Lori had any self-protection, she would have said, he's the one that, and she still probably would have been found guilty, but like she would not let her defense team go after Chad at all. And he is fully letting his team blame it all on Lori and Alex. And Lori might feel like he needs to be free. And if he's free, he can, I don't know, he can continue with the mission. Like, I don't know how she thinks about what, and she might not fully know like what's happening because she's not able to sit here and watch all of this while she's incarcerated.
At some point, did Chad, well, let me back up. Where were you living in November of 2018?
I moved up
Or
to
2019, excuse me, November 2019.
I moved up to Rexburg the first week in November of 2019.
Were you also living there in December of 2019?
Yes.
At some point, did you learn JJ and Tylee had been declared missing?
Yes.
Did Chad tell you anything in relation to where you should be living?
I remember that he said that Madison County wasn't safe and to wait until the whole thing blew over, but that I should move away out of that county for the time being.
And was this after the children had been deemed missing?
Yes.
Did you have occasion to observe Lori and Alex together?
Yes.
What did you observe about their relationship?
That they, from what I could tell, just had a playful, fun sibling relationship, would help each other out as brother, sister.
Would Alex do what Lori asked?
I'm not sure everything she's asked him, but for the most part, he would help her if she needed his help with something.
Did you have an opportunity to observe Alex and Chad together?
Yes.
What did you observe about their relationship?
Alex admired Chad and looked up to him like a brother.
Would Alex do what Chad asked him to do?
Objection calls for speculation.
I believe he had enough trust in Chad that he would listen to him.
And you talked about learning Alex stayed behind from Hawaii because Chad needed his help with something?
I believe that's what Lori said, that he was going to come with us, but ended up not working out.
I thought that was powerful.
When law enforcement were looking for the children, did you observe anything about how Alex seemed to feel about that or behave?
He seemed calm and normal, just collected his normal self.
And did Alex tell you anything in relation to how Chad reacted to law enforcement getting involved?
I don't remember who told me, but
Which
it was
Jack calls for speculation. It's hearsay.
Sustained.
Especially if she doesn't remember who. I'm glad we're doing this on 1.25
Did you
speed.
ever talk to Chad about concerns you had regarding tracking devices?
yes.
What do you recall about that?
Chad reached out and told me that my ex-husband was following me and had put a tracking device on my car.
Did that turn out to be true?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Did that make you trust him more?
Chad?
Yes.
It validated a lot of the things he was saying, for me at least.
Okay.
I may have just a moment.
You may.
I'm going to fast forward through that moment. He just sits so
To
still.
Hawaii.
Oh, wait.
Good morning.
I want to start off with the trip to Hawaii. Can you tell me when approximately you and Lori went to Hawaii?
I don't know the exact dates, but it was towards the middle or end of October.
And how long of a trip did that detail?
I believe it was a week, right around a week or 10 days, maybe.
Do you have any recollection of Lori ever leaving in that relative period for a longer trip to Hawaii, like 2 months or longer?
During the month of October?
No, in 2019, 2000.
So they didn't clarify that for me. That whole her husband supposedly having a tracker on her. Because my first thing was it Chad who was actually tracking? But if her husband really did it, okay, I don't know. But that part is confusing to me. I don't know what that part's about. And I believe her ex-husband, he did testify. I watched a portion of his testimony because he was the one, that I think, that was a failed attempt on his life by Alex. And so, wow.
2020.
After, I guess if this answers your question, after December when they left to Hawaii.
Well, I'm referencing a time when JJ was with Charles and Lori went to Hawaii for some time during that period. You remember that?
I'm not sure how long she went to Hawaii for.
February and March of 2019. Do you recall that?
I'm not sure what dates it was.
Okay. I want to go over a little bit of a procedural history so I get some context as to where you were living. So in November of 2018, where were you living?
2018, I was living in Gilbert, Arizona.
And you were close to Lori and Lori's residence as well?
Yes.
Okay, how close?
If I remember right, she was living in her Chandler house, so probably 10, 12 minutes.
And in November of 2018, did you at that time know a person by the name of Melanie Gibb?
Sometime in 2018, I think was when I was introduced to Melanie Gibb.
Do you remember when in 2018?
I think towards November sometime.
Did you participate in go to a seminar in 2018 with Melanie Gibb and Lori?
There was one Prepare People event that I attended, and I believe, I don't remember if she was there, but Chad was speaking at it.
Okay. And prior to that time, are you aware whether Lori had been introduced to Chad prior to November of 2018?
I believe she had already met him by November 2018.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
And you had already met Melanie Gibb at that time as well?
I believe so.
And you traveled to this Preparing the People conference?
It was in my city, or just in Mesa, I believe.
And Preparing the People, explain to me what that is.
It was my first time attending. I didn't know much about it, but Chad was speaking amongst a few other people, and it was like a mostly LDS based ideas of the second coming or how to prepare for the end of times.
Okay. And thank you for bringing that up. These Preparing the People conferences, these gatherings are based on your LDS faith. Is that right?
Objection, Your Honor, misstates the testimony.
Sustained.
Okay. based on ideas of LDS faith?
Some of the ideas there were LDS based.
Okay. And
But
when
not
you
all
said
of
the idea about the second coming,
Yes.
is that one of the ideas that's LDS based?
Yes.
Okay. So these preparing the people conferences are not anything that's inconsistent with being a member of the LDS church. Is that right?
Not that I saw.
Okay. And you were there for the conference, right?
Yes, I went to that one conference.
Now I came across some information on something called Seven Gatherers. Remember that?
It doesn't really ring a bell.
Okay. And you don't recall being involved with an organization called the Seven Gatherers with Melanie Gibb and Lori and Zuluma Pastenes?
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel's testifying.
Overruled.
Do you recall being involved in an organization called the Seven Gatherers with Melanie Gibb, Zuluma Pastenes, Lori, and yourself?
I don't remember being a part of a group called the Seven Gatherers.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, you previously testified that, well, I'll ask it this way. The vast majority of the information that you received about Chad came only from Lori. Is that fair?
Him too.
Yes, most everything came through Lori.
So you didn't confirm any of this with Lori. You basically took your aunt's word when she said Chad talked about these various topics. Would that be fair?
Yes.
Okay. And when Lori talked about moving,
He's a really good lawyer. I was wondering how they were going to try to put a spin on her testimony. And once again, coming back that, oh, Lori's the one that told you didn't hear this directly from Chad. But I bet you some of these things she might have heard directly from Chad. So I wish, but I don't know. So I wonder what if they are, if the state's going to come back. We will see. We will see. Prior, I'm not a fan, but like he's defending his client, and I get that. I get that.
from Arizona up to Idaho, you indicated that she wasn't particularly clear actually where she was going to move at that point. Would that be fair?
Yes.
In fact, there was a discussion with Lori at the time after Charles's death that she talked about living with Melanie Gibb. Do you recall that?
I didn't know she planned to live with Melanie Gibb.
She never told you that?
That doesn't sound familiar at all.
Okay. So if Lori were to make a representation that she would be,
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel's testifying.
Sustained.
And move to strike.
Stricken.
so this idea of light and dark,
He's a good
you
attorney.
originally mentioned that
She said
the
Chad.
light and dark is,
came up.
well, I guess I would like you to clarify. Are you saying that the mentioning of light and dark is something that's within the LDS faith in terms of the scriptures?
It does talk about light and dark in the scriptures.
Okay. So that was not a unusual or a new subject to you as part of being of the LDS faith. Is that right?
I didn't have a great grasp on it, but
Okay.
from what I understood it, the basis came from the scriptures.
Now, did you ever speak directly, and I mean face to face, to Chad about the children?
Are you referring to Tylee and
Kylie and
JJ?
JJ.
I don't know if I did.
Okay. So, and so any sort of information that you received about what Chad may have said, quite frankly, almost all of it came from Lori Vallow, did it not?
Most of it came from Lori Vallow.
Okay. You mentioned the name Julie Rowe.
Okay.
That name has come up previously. How do you know Julie Rowe?
I've never met Julie Rowe.
Do you know anything about what Julie Rowe does for an occupation?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Overruled.
You
I
mentioned-
believe she had a set of podcasts where she would talk about spiritual beliefs.
Okay. Did you ever attend any of her gatherings?
No.
And as far as Melanie Gibb, did you ever participate in any of Melanie Gibb's podcasts?
No.
Okay. Now, this idea of casting, you mentioned the idea of casting. Was that casting also part of your LDS faith?
It talks about casting out in the scriptures. I wasn't very familiar with it, but it,
Okay. So when we're talking about castings talked about in the scriptures, we're talking about the LDS scriptures, are we not?
But not that way, though.
yes.
Okay. And then I want to ask you a little bit about the term energy work. Are you familiar with that term?
Yes.
And what does that mean?
I think some people believe in doing different types of energy work.
And
I
what,
guess I don't
give me
know
an example
exactly
of a
what it
type of
means.
what type of energy, what would be an example of a type of energy work?
I'm not super familiar on it, but from people I've met that do energy work, they will either almost like a reading.
Okay.
They'll say if you have certain cords attached or certain connections to like your ancestors.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it kind of does. But the term of vibrations, have you heard that term before?
Yes.
And what is vibrations?
I believe in energy work there that you could be on a higher or lower vibration, like a frequency.
And that frequency is used for what?
I did not have vibrations on my bingo card, so I did not have that on there. Never heard about casting. So I have heard casting out. I have heard that part. But yeah, energy work while growing up in the LDS church. Yeah. I think Julie Rowe brought in some things that weren't traditional, I think. Some stuff that was more new agey.
I'm sorry, I don't know. I'm not super familiar on frequencies.
Would it be fair to say that some of this energy work is to be able to communicate with other entities?
I don't.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh.
It could be used to communicate with the dead, right?
Yes.
Ancestors.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And did you ever participate in energy work with Lori and Melanie Gibb?
I didn't really know a whole lot about energy work. From what I remember, I think Melanie Gibb was more familiar with it. So I would listen to their ideas, but I don't know if.
Right. And your recollection is Melanie Gibb was the one who was instructing you and Lori about the different aspects of vibrations and energy.
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel's testifying. These are facts, not evidence.
Sustained.
Move to strike.
The question is stricken.
Would Melanie Gibb teach you about this vibrations and energy work?
I don't remember talking a lot with Melanie Gibb about vibrations or energy work.
You do have a recollection, though, that Melanie Gibb was more versed in the understanding of
Objection,
energy.
Your Honor. Misstates testimony.
Overruled.
You do have a more distinct recollection of Melanie Gibb teaching you about the different aspects of energy work, right?
I don't have a distinct memory of talking about all the different aspects.
Okay.
of
But
it.
she was well versed in
Right.
it. I'm sorry, Judge.
Cutting her off before she's done, please. You can complete your answer.
Thank you.
Sorry, I don't think I was going with it.
All right, I'll re-ask it. I apologize for interrupting
Okay.
you. I've got it in here and I want to bring it out and it's coming out too fast, so I'll try to slow down.
Okay. Gotta slow down.
Melanie Gibb had a better understanding of this vibrations and energy work than you did.
I believe so. Yes.
And this was something that, were you aware of whether she went to remote camps and talked about this energy work?
Yes, she told me she went to camps and different things for that.
Okay. And when did she tell you that?
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Overruled.
I don't remember, but I think it would be sometime maybe in 2019 or 2018.
Okay. And at that point, was it your understanding that Melanie Gibb was teaching this energy work or at least instructing it to people at these remote camps?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for hearsay.
Overruled.
It sounded like she was maybe teaching at those classes or
trying.
at if there were camps or meetings, whatever she was attending.
And again, this was in 2018, 2019?
I'm not sure, but I lean towards 2019.
Okay.
He's trying to add doubt. And so Melanie Gibbs is one that he's also kind of tried to say, could she have been involved? And so I think he's just trying to grasp at anything to help his client.
Now, this idea of this term zombie,
Mhm.
that was a term that you heard from Lori Vallow, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. You never had Chad walk up to you and use the term zombie, did you?
I don't know if he, I guess I would say I assume he used that term with Lori together.
Okay, and you're assuming that because all of the information that you got regarding Chad Daybell came directly from Lori Vallow's mouth, right?
Objection, Your Honor. Misstates prior testimony.
Sustained.
All of the information about zombies that you learned came from Lori Vallow, did it not?
I don't know if it all came from Lori Vallow. I believed it to come from Chad.
Okay, and what are you basing that it came from Chad on? Chad never told you that, did he?
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative.
Overruled.
It is.
Chad never told you or used the word zombie in front of you, did he?
I can't remember a time that he did, but
Was she done? Maybe there. So what's happening?
And again, this
He was-
reason for when you went to Hawaii, I believe that was in October.
Mm.
The reason you felt Alex stayed behind is because Lori told you Chad needed Alex to help him with something. Is that right?
yes,
Okay. You didn't hear that from Chad telling you he needed help from Alex, right?
no,
Once again,
Yeah.
blaming Lori.
Was there anything unusual that you observed with Alex and Lori's personal relationship?
not that I observed, no.
Okay. Would it have been a habit of Alex that when Lori moved to a new location, Alex would go to the same location?
No,
Okay. Alex lived in Arizona with Lori, right?
Objection, Your
Um,
Honor. Counsel's testifying. Move to strike.
Overruled.
Alex lived in Arizona with Lori, correct?
for a time, yes.
Okay. Alex wanted to go to Hawaii with Lori when Lori moved to Hawaii.
I don't know if he wanted to go to Hawaii.
Alex moved to Rexburg, Idaho when Lori moved to Rexburg, Idaho.
Yes, he moved with Lori.
And Alex wanted to move with Melanie Gibb and Lori when she was going to move back with them to Arizona.
Objection, Your Honor. Facts not in evidence. Counsel's testifying. Move to strike.
Sustained.
Judge, I don't have anything else. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Blake, once you're ready, you can conduct any redirect if you wish.
I'm glad that you can see that because I just saw him like this. But I think he liked it when. Are you saying he was more engaged when Pryor was talking to her? Because to
Ms.
me, he was
Pulowski,
stellar.
did Chad and Lori teach you these things?
I believe they were both present when these ideas were, that both of the ideas were from both of them.
And you were asked a little bit about castings being part of the scriptures. When you're referencing that, do the scriptures reference it the same as the way Chad and Lori were teaching about castings?
No,
What about light and dark? Do the scriptures reference light and dark in the same way Chad and Lori were teaching about it?
no, they would use it as a basis and then elaborate with their ideas.
In using that as a basis, did it draw your attention?
Yes, they had a way to explain where everything their ideas came from and how there was a scriptural basis from it.
Did that make you more open to listening to them?
Yes,
The way they talked about zombies, have you ever seen that as part of the LDS faith?
no,
As part of the LDS faith, have you ever heard it taught that a body has to be destroyed if someone's possessed?
no,
And Alex didn't live with Lori in Arizona, is that correct?
I believe they had separate apartments.
And Judge, could we have a sidebar very quickly?
Uh-oh.
Sure.
Okay. Don't know what that was about. Okay. I don't know what that's about.
Go ahead, Ms. Blake.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think you just clarified that you believe Lori and Alex had separate apartments in Arizona, correct?
Yes,
When Lori moved to Hawaii in February or March of 2019, did Alex go with her?
I don't know.
To the best of your knowledge, did he move there?
I don't know at all.
When you talked about Alex going to Hawaii, that was for just a trip in October?
I don't remember talking about going to Hawaii with Alex. I just planned it with Lori.
And let me back up. On the trip that you'd heard Alex was intending to come, was that the October 2019 trip?
Yes,
And that was not to relocate, is that correct? It was just to visit?
to Hawaii.
Yes.
No, Lori said that he had told me he was going to join us, and then the plans changed.
And that was just a trip, though? You weren't going to remain in Hawaii?
Yes, Lori and I just planned it as a trip.
And when we talk about the light and dark, would you ask Lori to get the answers from Chad on that, if someone was light or dark?
Yes,
And did you ever learn anything in relation? And again, did you learn whether or not Charles was designated as dark?
Yes,
And was he designated as dark?
I believe so, yes.
Is Charles still alive?
No,
Was JJ designated as dark?
I believe so, yes.
Judge, this is going beyond the scope of cross.
Your Honor, is JJ still alive?
No,
Was Tylee labeled as dark?
yes,
Is Tylee still alive?
no.
I have no further questions.
All right. Thank you,
And
Ms.
there
White.
are people that were labeled dark that are still alive, but
All right, that'll conclude the testimony then of Ms. Pulowski. Is she still going to remain under subpoena from either the state or the defense?
oh,
Your Honor, the state would ask for her to remain under just temporarily for today.
Okay. Well, where that would only be for today at the request of the state, is the defense intending to perhaps recall her in its case?
No, Judge.
Okay, then, Ms. Pulowski, you are excused and apparently released from any subpoena until the state would decide later and advise you when that would occur. I am going to advise you not to watch any trial testimony online or in the courtroom until you're advised that you are no longer under subpoena for this case.
Okay.
Thank you to
Thank you,
appear
Judge.
and testify. You can step down.
all right. So then I believe Eric, y'all know I'm bad with names. The next individual is going to testify. Let me know in the chat, should we keep going until I can? So I have about 30 minutes left. Do y'all want us to keep going for as much as we can get through? Or do y'all want to stop here for now? Let me know in the chat. Thank you for watching. Once again, I'm Dr. Berry, licensed psychologist. I do this as a way to just share education and information. This case brings up issues of spiritual harm, spiritual abuse. Okay, we will keep going, Laura. All right, so let's keep going. I believe Pulowski, he's going to be the next person to come in. So you want somebody's in that chair, and we will press play. All right. He was just sworn in. This might be, I don't know if this is her husband. I don't know who he is.
All right, now that Mr. Pulowski's been placed under oath, I do have an inquiry before we start on direct. Mr. Pulowski, there is a exclusionary order not allowing you to listen to any court proceedings before you testified. And this case has been streamed live as well as open to the public. So have you listened to or reviewed in any way any testimony that's occurred in the trial since it started?
No, sir.
All right. Have you talked to anyone else about their testimony? No. All right. Thank you. Ms. Blake, you can inquire on direct.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you please state your name and spell it for the record?
Ian Pulowski, IANPAWLOWSKI.
I'm bad with names.
Do you know an individual named Lori Vallow?
Yes.
How do you know her?
I met her through my wife, Melanie Pulowski.
Do you know if she's related to Melanie Pulowski?
She's her aunt.
Do you know an individual named Alex Cox?
Yes.
And how do you know him?
Also met through my wife, Melanie, and he is her uncle.
Do you know an individual named Chad Daybell?
Yes.
And how do you know him?
Met through Melanie, married Lori Vallow.
Do you recall approximately when you met Lori and Chad?
I believe it was the 23rd or 24th of November, 2019.
Did you meet them in person?
Yes.
Do you recall where they were located when you met them?
They were in the apartment just next to Melanie's apartment in Rexburg.
And do you recall when you first met Alex Cox?
It was the night that Melanie and I got married,
And do you recall approximately when that was?
November 30th, 2019.
So he was not present when you met Chad and Lori?
No.
At a later date, did you have a conversation with Chad and Lori over Zoom?
Yes.
Why did you have that call with them?
It was to ask their blessing in marrying Melanie
And why did you want to ask their blessing in marrying her?
because of how I understood the relationship that they had.
What did you understand about Melanie's relationship with them?
That Melanie had a kind of a parental view on them. Chad and Lori were kind of guides and supports to her at that point in her life.
When you reached out to them on Zoom, did the call actually take place?
Yes.
Did you end up asking for their blessing?
Yes.
Did they give it to you?
Yes.
Do you recall any?
Imagine meeting someone and based on the chat, it sounds like he worked like with the police or something. Like it sounds like he's might be law enforcement or something. The way he's answering the questions is very direct. It's like someone who maybe has done testimony or like that knows about testifying in court. Wow. And then their niece and nephew go missing, their aunt's arrested, the other guy that gave you a blessing is arrested. I can't imagine.
Anything else that happened during that call?
They gave me, in addition to, giving me a blessing, or saying, they approve of me marrying Melanie. They gave me a religious blessing.
Was anything strange about the religious blessing to you?
It was unorthodox based on the LDS beliefs that I held at the time. He talked about shielding me with light, removing dark weapons from me. The fact that it did not occur in person. Typically, in LDS faith, when you receive a blessing, it's by the laying on of hands and not over Zoom.
Had you ever had a blessing like that before?
No.
Did you end up saying anything about thinking it was a little odd?
Yeah.
Did you say it to Chad and Lori at that time?
No, I said it to Melanie.
I think so. Somebody say it. I believe so.
When you first met Chad and Lori on the 23rd or 24th of November, do you recall if you met Tylee Ryan at that time?
I didn't.
No.
Did you meet JJ Vallow?
No.
Did you ever see them anywhere around?
No.
Did Lori ever mention them to you?
No.
Did Chad make mention of them?
No.
When you had the Zoom call, where were you located?
I was at my sister's house in Arizona.
Do you know where Chad and Lori were at that time?
I didn't.
Had Melanie shared, you said you mentioned the blessing was odd
Right.
to Melanie. At any point, did Melanie share some of the beliefs she'd been taught?
Yes.
At some point, did you start hearing some of those beliefs or teachings from Chad and Lori?
Yes.
When Melanie was sharing those with you, was that prior to your marriage?
Yes. There was some that was shared prior to my marriage, and then the bulk of it was the night that we got married.
Initially, were you somewhat open to some of the ideas she was sharing?
Yes.
How long did you remain open to those ideas?
Until the night we got married.
What changed that night?
The weight of what she was sharing, the implications of what she was sharing, it was just hearing that she feared that Tylee and JJ may have been in danger at that time, and the behavior that she was seeing from Chad and Lori at that time.
Ooh, Chad and
Did what she shared with you cause you concern?
Yes.
Did something happen that next morning to amplify your concern?
Yes. That next morning, my daughter thought it would be funny to play hide and seek. And so I got up, I was looking for her. She would not answer. It was quiet in that hotel room for about 5 minutes. I couldn't find her. And then I heard some giggling. She was behind a curtain.
Based on what was shared with you, did you have concerns for the safety of JJ and Tylee?
Yes.
Did you have concerns for other people's safety?
Yes, I did.
Who were those individuals?
My 2 children and my ex-wife.
wow.
At some point, did you go to law enforcement with your concerns?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately when that would have been?
I believe that was December 4th or 5th.
Whoa. Okay, so I was not aware that he had concerns that Chad and Lori, that something might have happened to his children and his ex-wife. If for some reason Chad and Lori didn't feel like they fit into like the grand plan, because they seemed to, but like, that is so strange. That is very, very strange. Wow.
Did you sit down with law enforcement at that time?
Yes.
Did you participate in an interview?
Yes.
Did law enforcement end up asking for your assistance?
Yes.
As part of that, did they ask you to record conversations?
Yes.
Did they instruct you to only record those conversations if you were present and part of the conversation?
Yes.
Did Chad and Lori ever talk to you or talk in front of you about people being light or dark?
Yes.
Do you recall specifically talk of law enforcement?
Yes.
What was shared with you in relation to law enforcement?
That there were specific detectives that had been possessed. I can't remember. There were a few different types of possession that they discussed, and I can't remember specifically what type of possession they classified. But there were a few detectives named.
Did they? And at the time these conversations took place, they would have been after December 4th or 5th of 2019.
Yes.
Do you recall approximately what time period you would have had these conversations or done the recordings?
Would have been the weekend that Melanie and I went on our honeymoon to Jackson.
Do you recall what weekend that would have been?
It was the weekend of my birthday, so December 6th, 7th, and 8th, I believe.
During that time, was there a recording made with Lori and Chad on the call?
Yes,
Were Zulema and Alex also on the call?
yes,
And you and Melanie?
yes,
Do you recall learning that Alex had passed away?
yes.
Do you recall approximately when that would have been
I want to say that was December 10th or 11th,
of 2019?
2019. Yes,
Do you recall making a recording that day as well?
yes.
And on that call, do you recall Chad and Lori being on the call
Yes,
and you and Melanie?
yes,
When these calls were being made, had you learned whether Tylee and JJ were missing?
yes,
And did you know they were missing at that time?
yes.
Where were you living in December of 2019?
I had an apartment just across the street from Melanie's, and at that point after we got married, I'd moved into Melanie's apartment.
And was that in Rexburg, Idaho?
Yes,
Do you recall Chad telling you anything in relation to whether or not you should move?
yes.
And what did he direct?
That we should leave as soon as possible. Just get away from law enforcement, basically.
When you talked about Melanie's relationship with Chad and Lori, did she look to them as a mother and father figure?
Yes,
Do you feel she was susceptible to what they were telling her?
yes,
Overruled.
yes, she was.
Your Honor, I have what's been marked as State's Exhibit 266A. It is a
Let's
thumb
listen.
drive. I am going to be asking to publish it.
All right. And
Let's listen.
describe what the contents are.
The recordings that were just referenced, I think I'll need to lay some additional foundation, and I recognize that, but it may include needing to play a portion of it to allow Mr. Pulowski to identify it.
Okay, very well.
And if I can be handed that.
All right, Mr. Bailiff, we'll have that exhibit please return to council. And then for the limited purpose of establishing foundation, you can play a small portion without any content that would otherwise not be admissible.
And Mr. Pulowski, you talked about making some recordings at the request of law enforcement. Do you recall that?
Yes,
And you talked about making one recording when you were on your honeymoon in Jackson.
yes.
And again, do you recall when that was?
December 6th, I believe, or 7th that I made the recording.
And did you in fact turn those recordings over to law enforcement?
I did.
And if you were to hear a portion of what's purported to be that recording, do you think you would recognize it?
Absolutely.
See how quality is.
Your Honor, I would ask to publish just the first portion.
You may.
So,
What's that?
so when Lucifer attacks,
And I'll stop it right there. Were you able to hear those initial voices?
Yes,
Do you recognize the female voice?
yes, that's Melanie.
And do you recognize the male voice that was heard?
I'm not sure if that was Chad or Alex.
In what you heard from Melanie, do you recall this being the recording from the day we talked about?
Yes,
And Your Honor, I would move for admission of State's Exhibit 266A.
Any objection?
With the understanding, Judge, that the entire recording of 266A is included as an exhibit. If that's the case, there's no objection.
Okay, Ms. Blake, I'll admit it. I would like you, if you can, to reference the, if you have, for example, the length or duration of the call so that we can confirm that it's the entire recording being admitted.
Yes, Your Honor. The jump drive being admitted into evidence will have 87 minutes. It's the state's intent and request to publish portions of that, and I will put the time marks on the record as we publish those.
All right, that works. Thank you, Ms. Blake. So
87
266A is admitted in its entirety.
She's on
The
jump
mark 636, so 6 minutes and 36 seconds.
Thank you.
You guys heard about Dave yesterday?
no,
So she was talking to Dave, and Dave said the reason he wasn't moving forward in their relationship is because he never got a confirmation on zombies. He doesn't believe she was really ordained. And if she was really ordained in 148,000, you know, he would change his mind.
right.
So he's not buying anything. And Gibb said, talk yourself into thinking that the only way to clear her conscience is to call the police and tell them that she knows, which is that she never had JJ. And when she asked who it was, you and I told her that she was better off not knowing.
I said that?
That's what she says.
She threw me under the bus for nothing?
Yes, we were walking in the park.
No, not just you. She was throwing everybody under
She was throwing everybody in the bus because she thought the cops would present the rule and that was gonna clear the conscience of God. Which made, she didn't even know what it is.
Okay, so. It's Raphael. You what? Hold on.
And sorry, y'all, there aren't captions, and I'm not able to turn it up. There should be captions for this portion that's added later, but what I'm hearing is it sounds like it might have been Melanie, and I think they'll probably clarify what was said, but that Melanie was kind of wanting to go to the police to clear up like what had happened. And then I heard Lori speak up briefly.
Call us back, so I waited. Okay.
Lori and
Mama.
Melanie Vallow, are you there?
I'm here. I miss you. I miss you. No. Oh, perfect. Good daddy.
We're alive. She'll be able to hear you when she stops sobbing.
Oh, I miss you guys.
Oh, did you lose my baby? Where is he?
I'm here. I'm in the ER tonight.
And I'm stopping at 8 minutes, 50 seconds. Mr. Pulowski, we hear several people on there.
Yes.
The first man on the call, did you recognize his voice now that you heard more of it?
Yes,
And who was that?
that was Alex.
And we hear another female join in initially. Could you tell who that was?
That was Zulema.
And it's hard to hear, but did you hear Alex talking about Dave?
Yes,
Do you know who he was referencing?
I believe he's referencing David Warwick.
And he was talking about Dave's not buying anything.
Right.
Do you know what that was in reference to?
I believe at that time they were, Melanie Gibb and David Warwick were both kind of, I don't know how, I never met them in person, never discussed anything with them in person. I never heard them on calls. So I don't know how pulled into it they were at that time, but they were essentially trying to step away because things were starting to get a little too hot.
And the indication was that Dave's not buying it.
Right.
And there was also talk of Melanie Gibb was going to go to the police.
Mhm.
Did you hear that?
Yes,
And she was going to tell the police she never had JJ. Did you also hear that part?
yes,
Did you know what that was in relation to?
no,
And then at some point, a female says, Raphael. Do you know who that was referencing?
yes,
And who was that?
Chad.
And then it sounds like two more individuals joined the call. Could you tell who the female was?
That was Lori.
And could you tell who the man was?
That was Chad.
And there's reference to mommy and daddy.
Right.
Was that in relation to Melanie as if she were their child?
Correct. Yes,
And you talk about Melanie sobbing.
yes,
Were you present with Melanie?
I was.
Did she appear overcome with emotion?
Yeah, she was relieved to hear their voices.
Had she not heard from them in some time?
Throughout those first few weeks, they had a tendency to call in and then disappear for a few days or a week at a time.
And did you know where Chad and Lori were located when that call took place?
No.
Mr. Pulaski, I'm sorry, would you scoot up a little
Yes,
closer
of
to your
course.
mic while you?
And I think if you put the mic just under your chin, I believe they're directional. Might pick you up a little better. I'm next going to move to, actually, let me try to get it there. I'm going to be starting at 9 minutes, 25 seconds.
Oh, I had that yesterday too. Yeah. Well, it was out yesterday. It gets all so bad. Well, it was emotional for me yesterday. Like I just missed my kid like nuts. I was bawling in the temple, but.
Okay. So I think this is a great, so I do think that Pryor might be able to keep Chad from getting the death penalty, because I don't think the state's going to be able to prove that he's the one that like, I think he was involved in some way, but I don't know that they're going to be able to prove it to a point where people will go for the death penalty in this case. Or I think Pryor will be able to bring up enough doubt where I think at this point, the state has a very, very strong case. And yeah, I think the state's case is really strong, but Pryor might be able to keep him from getting the death penalty.
Your Honor, I'm going to stop it at 9 minutes, 40 seconds. There was some talk on there about some attacks, and Melanie talks about an emotional attack in relation to her kids. Do you know what's being referenced there? Was someone actually being attacked?
No physical attacks. What they're referencing were spiritual attacks from Satan.
Did that link back to the blessing that you were given by Chad?
Yes.
Had you heard of spiritual attacks before, like they were talking about them?
Yes.
And had you heard about them from someone besides this group?
I'd only heard these types of attacks from Melanie.
Or going to be moving to 14 minutes, 15 seconds.
It's horrible. Is he one of the bad ones?
It gets quiet all of a sudden. I always wonder if like I'm paused. I see people moving, so I know it's playing.
Horrible. Is he one of the bad ones? Yeah, him and Hope are the two bad ones. I wondered if it was Lieutenant Ball. Lieutenant Ball kept bringing me food and water. And I was like, is he poisoning me? He's like, here's some fresh banana bread. And I was like, I don't know about this banana bread. He's probably good. The other ones are good. Hope, you said? Hope and your guy, your Messina guy. Those are the two bad ones. Yeah, so he has all my stuff.
And stopping at 14 minutes, 44 seconds. In there, do you hear the reference that Hope and Hermosillo are the bad ones?
Yes.
Do you know where Hope and Hermosillo work?
Yes.
Where do they work?
Rexburg Police Department.
Next, I will be going to mark 20 minutes, 38 seconds.
So, like, you know about you? Just that she's not good. She's a little doubting and falling because of Dave. Just that she's gonna go tell the police that she's like. Yeah, and throw all this under the bus. I don't know. That makes sense. Remember, I always got that thing about her that. Yeah, and I was like, so I was just mama bear claws towards you. Like I was like. Yeah, well, the Lord kept saying, like, Melanie, like, you don't trust her, but just let Lori have her, experience with that. And I just keep, doing what I'm doing. And it bothered me because I was like, I want to trust her because you trust her. And I kept getting something else. So it makes sense now, I guess. It's Dave that's causing the problem. Yeah. Well, how do you see it going, I guess? Like, that is bad for her in every way because we can't trust her anymore. She does that for one. For two, it ruins her place with us. But for three, you call the police and you tell them that you're a liar, and then you try to tell them something that's the truth. They're gonna be like, you just said you were a liar. Right. So I don't know if I trust that at all. Right. So you kind of shoot yourself in the foot. You call them, tell them that you lied, and then try to tell them the truth. Right. So I don't see it going anywhere bad for any of us.
And stopping at 22 minutes, 18 seconds. Mr. Pulowski, do you hear in there again talk of Dave and Melanie?
Yes.
Do you know which Dave they're referencing?
It's still David Warwick.
And the Melanie?
Melanie Gibb.
And did you hear in there again talk of Melanie was going to go to the police and tell them she lied?
Yes.
And do you hear Lori's responses that there's going to be three things for her?
Right.
One, that she's essentially lost her place with this group. Is that correct?
Yes.
One, she has all this knowledge and she may be accountable for it.
Yes.
And third, that now she's going to go tell the police the truth after lying.
Yes.
Do you know what Melanie Gibb had lied to the police about?
She had lied to the police about having, I believe it was just JJ in her possession.
And again, there's reference to Dave kind of being the problem or Melanie's falling because of Dave. Did you hear that as well?
Yes.
Your Honor, next I'm moving to 22 minutes, 45 seconds.
So Julie had said that you guys felt that maybe we should consider going to Idaho Falls for a little while, and we prayed about it and felt like, I don't know, I felt like either one will be fine. Like we're gonna be okay no matter what. So I don't know if there's a better option or a good option, but we kind of just felt like we're okay to stay there. Like that's our home and we're making it just our place of light and it'll be protected. But is there something we need to be aware of or?
My only worry was if they're watching it.
Yeah, well, they are, and they're probably tracking my phone and listening in or whatever, but I'm aware we're just doing our own thing and kind of just.
So I wonder, so his wife probably didn't know that he was recording these calls for the police. I wonder how their marriage was after, like how she felt after finding out that he was the one that was recording the calls and turned them in, because she seems very much still caught up in believing Chad and Lori and very much bonded to them and not really seeing how they are, in my opinion, manipulating her, almost like a trauma bond versus a secure bond.
Just hanging out together. So we're at my apartment.
That's where you're at right now.
Well, right now we're in Jackson, but we've just been sleeping at my apartment and we're putting the 30 days on his apartment. He lives literally across the street at those other apartments. So,
I did find a house that's really cute, $1,500 a month that's there in Rexburg. That might be a good thing. Maybe you want to move.
I mean, if you guys are thinking we need to move, I kind of felt like we were fine. That like, kind of like pretty much what can they do? I mean,
And stopping at 24 minutes, 23 seconds. Could you, outside of you and Melanie, could you hear the other male and female on there?
Yes,
Or, excuse me, I don't think you're on there. Outside of Melanie, do you know who the other female was that was speaking?
that was Lori.
And do you know who the male was?
That was Chad.
And Chad indicated he had a worry that they were still watching Melanie.
Right.
Do you know who he was referring to?
The police, law enforcement in general.
Had law enforcement talked to Melanie?
At that point, I don't believe they had.
And had you talked to law enforcement?
Yes.
Did you know they were actively looking for JJ and Tylee?
Yes.
Moving to minute 26, second 07.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to keep going and going. What can they possibly do?
well, he said he's not going to stop until, you know, until they get what they want. So I don't know. There's some.
So you need to get out of that complex.
Okay.
Not rush out of it, but they're not gonna leave you alone. I could sense the network pretty deep, and they're gonna see you as the target since you're the only one that they really can find at the moment. For your own sake, for your own sanity, you bet.
Okay.
We know you were led there, and it worked for 2 months for us as we planned. We got together and we found Ian, and now a different phase of your life has begun.
So his.
Like he's so, like he doesn't react at all. Like he's just so stoic. And because to me, he's using a lot of we. Now the defense might say like Lori had him convinced, or I don't know. The defense might try to turn this around. To me, this evidence is pretty, because you get to hear it for yourself. And a lot of times videos, when juries get to hear things for themselves and see things for themselves, sometimes that really has an impact on what they think of things.
His kids are in Rexburg and Natalie.
I know. You don't have to move super far away.
Just a different city.
Exactly.
Yeah. Madison County, you know,
Well, it's in Rexburg.
I'm not saying you got to decide tonight. The sex complex went from a blessed place to a cursed place due to the
Yeah.
wickedness of the police.
Can we not expect the police to be that wicked?
Well, and if it is just gonna be a couple weeks, like we could do an Airbnb and just stay in Idaho Falls somewhere. I mean, Ian works there. And that's close enough to where we could go pick up the kids and they wouldn't even know that we're not in Rexburg. But do you feel like a whole physical change of address and moving everything to a new place is what will be best?
You do. I know it's pain. I think they're not gonna leave you alone. So you're out of that video.
Like the Saints in Missouri, I just keep moving and I can't find a safe place.
Because she's not around safe people. I hope everything is safe and good now, but like if you're not with safe people, you're not going to feel safe. And then I think the court then went on break. It looks like they may still be on break. Thank y'all so much for watching. This is a lot. I did not know about this witness. I don't know if this came up during Lori's trial. Lori's trial was audio only, and I struggle with just audio. Like, I need the picture. That's why, like, when they're playing the recording, sometimes you see me looking down because I really have to focus when it's just the auditory information. But I really appreciate you all for being here. I have a whole playlist on my thoughts on Chad if you all are new here. For the Chad and Lori cases, the bits that I've covered. There's a lot in this case, and so I don't cover everything. Tomorrow, I'm doing a live with my mom. It's already scheduled. It is about healing your inner child, healing attachment wounds. And because often I talk about my own experience growing up and how I was parented and how I'm parenting my child different. And a lot of you all have had questions about like, how does my mom feel about some of the information that I share and what I say? Because we have a very good relationship. We used to have a podcast together. I think I'll still release that episode on the podcast playlist, but it's also going to be in like a general playlist as well. So we'll see with that. But once again, thank y'all for being here, and I hope y'all enjoy your day. Bye.